This is the Transcend in Life podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson, taking you from fear to freedom.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another Transcend in Life podcast. I have with me Matt Beaudreau, certified keynote speaker, founder and CEO of Acton Placer, runs a podcast called The Essential 11. Overall, just an amazing guy, and I cannot wait to get into this conversation because what he's doing is so different in terms of academically, and it's exciting because the world is changing and he is making this world a better place. With that being said, Matt, brother, what's up? Thanks for being here.
Dude, pleasure is absolutely mine. Thank you for having me, man. It's exciting.
Well, it is exciting, and I cannot wait to share with the world what your school is all about. And I know you're so much more than that. We'll talk about so much that you're doing for the world, but give a little background, give a kind of history of how you got to where you got to, because you, similar to me, went to a normal school, right? And then you've developed something so different, and I love it.
Yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head. We went to normal school. We did it. What it looks like for you and me is what it looked like really for our parents. What it's looked like for a lot of the kids now, right? Even though the world has been changing, schools looked pretty much the same, and so it definitely was that. And I definitely was the guy that learned how to play the game early and got my straight A's. It was easy, right? And then I walked out of high school and went, cool, man, got my straight A's. Now what, right? I don't know what to offer the world. I'm good at sports and I can talk to girls and I'm done. Like, that's all I got, so I guess I'll go to college, man. And college ended up being much of the same, same thing, got my straight A's, figured out how to play the school game, came out, no idea who I was or what I wanted to do, and so that mindset, that has always stuck with me. And so, fast forward, as I start to get into education, was at Stanford working at Stanford for quite a while, went into public schools, was a public school teacher, public school administrator, private school teacher, private school administrator. And what I saw was much of the same, was kids learning to play the game or not, and coming out not knowing who they were, whether they played the game or not. Right. And so I'm seeing these disconnects, man, of just, the way things should be. And so I start taking kind of this deep dive and going, man, okay, why are we doing school this way? What the system itself, like why? Why did we do it this way? Why do we continue to do it this way? And as I went down that rabbit hole, it changed everything for me. It became very clear to me that, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. And oh, by the way, now I got kids. And I definitely don't want to do this for my kids. And so that was really kind of the impetus for me going, okay, I got to figure something else out. I got to try some other things out. This is what I see is working. This is what I'm being told to do. Those were usually polar opposites. And I got to make something else happen, man. So that was really kind of started the mindset shift, which then, of course, set off this whole nother journey, man.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the journey. Yeah. Fear to Freedom is the subtitle of what we do. Yeah. I think when it comes to education, there's a lot of fear in terms of, but I did it this way. That's the way it is, Matt. Yeah. Is that one of the most frequent ones that you encounter? Because just my wife and I obviously have asked you hundreds of questions and I think a lot of them are fear-based. So how do you help people overcome that? And maybe even yourself, because again, you were asking some pretty significant questions.
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. It is a fear-based thing, and we fear going against tradition for any number of reasons. One, tradition tells us that life looks a certain way. So anytime you start thinking outside that box, obviously there's a little bit of uncomfortability. But what I find out is it's mostly the majority of what you're uncomfortable about is really how are other people going to perceive it if I go this way, right? Is it whether it's my parents, my neighbors, whatever, it's how are they going to perceive me if I do something different? And I think that's a human spirit thing. That's something we've always been, as a human species, in this culture, that's something we've always been afraid of, man. And I think through a number of experiences, I got around that very, very early, and I'm very thankful that I did get around that. So I haven't dealt with that a whole bunch, and there's a number of reasons that I kind of went through that. So, but that is something that we get from the parents. It's like, ooh, why are you guys doing it this way? What does that look like? Here's the beauty. As much as I can walk people through, what I find is intellectually speaking, when I start saying, look, this is what we do as a system for our school. This is how different it is from the system you and I grew up with. On the intellectual level, I don't find anybody that doesn't agree with us. I really don't. It's the emotional level. Intellectually, they get it. You can't do things the same way in a world that's changing, right? And I can relate it to business. A business that doesn't adapt, a business that doesn't change is a business that dies, right? Look at, I mean, more recently, you're seeing this over and over and over. Toys R Us, right, was a huge example, right? They would not adapt. They wouldn't adjust. This is the way we've always done things. They ended up dying. The world is changing. Businesses need to adapt. We're no different. People need to adapt. School is a system that needs to adapt. We're not doing right by our kids if we don't. People can get that intellectually. It's the emotional pull of, oh, my kid, yeah, they're making $1,000 a month and they're 12. And, yes, they're more responsible. Yes, they're happier. Yes. But I don't they need algebra? Like, that's a real thing. That's a real conversation that I've had, and so it's that emotional tie. But really what we're saying is just kind of the proof is in the pudding at this point. We've had so many kids now, just not just at our Acton Placer, but globally, that have done anything and everything, you would hope and dream for your own kids. So it's becoming less and less of a battle as they're seeing the proof, seeing this play out.
Yeah, and so you talk, gosh, there's so much to unpack
There's
there.
so much, dude.
Yeah.
So much.
I mean, talk about credibility. You have some big players behind that are really embracing this idea and this change. So I want to talk about that, but we got to get back because you mentioned something I don't want to forget. You just kind of just said on a whim $1,000 a week for a 12-year-old. It's like, that's not uncommon for you guys. That's common. Right. So my first question is, you have some pretty big names that are behind this idea. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that and some of the partnerships that Acton in general and some of the partnerships that you put together? Yeah.
So we are, when I say we're a network, we really are a network. There's a lot of individuals like myself around the world. There's a couple hundred of us right now that are doing, building these communities where they are, right? And we're all connecting on a daily basis too. And most of them aren't names that you would necessarily know. But the beauty of it is it's not a quote unquote franchise. It really is a network of us sharing ideas and trying to get better, right? And so part of what I've had the opportunity to do is take my other career has been in speaking and working with Fortune 500s around the world, right? Like that's what I've been doing for many, many years. And so I've made some really good contacts with that. And so I've been able to rally our community around here, but partially go back to some of these big players and go, what should school look like right now, right? And get their insight and get the insight from the CEOs and the hiring managers of all these organizations, come back and inform what we're doing. So, again, it's more opportunity for our kids, but then you've got all these other kind of big players that are going, yes, this is what it should look like. So, Gary Vaynerchuk is, of course, one that, and we'll be releasing his episode he was just on the podcast as well a couple weeks ago. And so we'll be releasing that episode pretty soon. But he's been somebody that's kind of stood up for us for the last couple of years. And, the first time I ever talked to him about it in true Gary fashion, he slams his hand on the table and he goes, now that's a school I would have effing gone to, right? He throws it out there. And then we had an event that we put on last year and he gave us a shout out and was just like, hey, man, I want to give a big shout out to Acton Placer and this event they've got going on, like the type of education these guys are offering, right? So he's kind of had our back. Damon John, got word of kind of what we're doing with these young entrepreneurs and young sharks. So he's kind of, he's had our back and throwing stuff out there. I've got Seth Godin, if any listeners are familiar with him, he's a big fan of just the Acton network in general, and coming on the podcast tomorrow or in a couple days. And so, we've got a lot of these guys that are very forward thinking, and hearts of gold and really want to do right by, our younger generations that are saying, look, this is what school needs to look like to get our kids ready moving forward. So,
yeah, you just mentioned 3 trailblazers of names and guys that really were looked at in an odd way at some point, and then just absolutely have flourished and come into their own. Yep. And my point in saying that, again, to go back to the 12-year-old making $1,000, that is a part of the spirit of your school, is the entrepreneurial spirit and the growth mindset. Can you just talk on the overall philosophy? Because again, I think if somebody's listening to this, they're going, okay, it's a different school. Is it accredited? Blah, blah, blah. We're going to get to all that for sure. Can you talk about the overall philosophy of the school? Maybe the Socratic method, the growth mindset, because it is so unique, and I loved it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. If we really get down to kind of the foundation, we talk incessantly about the hero's journey, right? We relate it to like Joseph Campbell's work on the hero's journey and what that looks like. But the easiest way to break that down is The reality is, JM, you are really, really good at a few things as a human being, and in fact, I'm going to go as far as to say it. You have a very specific genius that nobody else on this planet has. You have this specific combination which allows you to have this superpower, whatever the JM superpower is, right? You're not good at everything because no human being is good at everything, right? We want to find out what that genius is for JM. You walk in those doors, our commitment to you on your hero's journey is that you are going to find a calling to allow you to change the world. That's what we're after for every single one of our kids. And you cannot be a part of this network. You cannot be a part of my team and my staff. You cannot be a part of our community if you do not believe that every single child that walks through those doors has that genius, has that superhero power that we are looking for. It's a fundamental belief of who we are and what we're doing. So that is belief number one, right? It starts there, that we're looking for that power. So, as these guys come through, as they come through the door, we're giving them all these different opportunities to try to figure out who they are. We're giving them all of these different challenges and quests and all that. Everything is geared towards that foundational thing.
No, I love that. And again, I do believe, as you well know, we do have these superpowers. And to your point, no one can be great at everything. We all have strengths and weaknesses, but you're really pinpointing like, hey, what do you love?
That's it.
And what can you, so you're sharing gifts with the world. That's the idea?
Sharing gifts with the world, double down, triple down on your strengths, and we do, folks, we think a lot of that comes out through that entrepreneurial journey. We have parents that'll say to us, hey, I don't think my kid's an entrepreneur, so I'm not sure if this school makes sense. I'm like, look, man, I fully believe 95% of people should not be entrepreneurs. It is not, it's just like saying everybody should go to the NBA. No, that's not the case. But I do believe everybody benefits from the entrepreneurial mindset, right? Understanding who I am, what my superpower is, and how do I bring value? How do I learn? How do I unlearn when something's no longer relevant? And how do I provide value to the world around me? And that can be in the form of being an entrepreneur, or it can be the form of being an employee who is looking at the organization and going, hey, boss, here's how I can provide value to you. Here's where I think we're going to need to pivot, because change is, as we've already mentioned, so necessary now. It's more necessary now for an organization than it's ever been, because things change at the drop of a hat, and so organizations are going to need to be willing to adapt, and you're going to have to all of a sudden, disregard something that no longer makes sense in society and take on something new. We need people that can flow with that, and that have a mindset that allows them to do that. That is what we are training, is that mindset.
Yeah, it seems like it's ever evolving. And one of the things that our big questions are like, okay, because my wife they got to go to college, and whether they do or they don't, yeah. I think what I love about your guys' thought is, great, if you want to go, that's awesome. Yep. We support that. If you don't want to go, we've set you up with some real world skills where you are actually already operating a business. So maybe you can touch on that, because again, I think that's where people get stuck, is like, but this is the way it's always been, so it's got to be that way.
Right. Yeah, I love, that's one of the things, one of the questions that I ask on the Essential 11 is, what is the one thing that is common knowledge that everybody knows, but you say, yeah, that's not correct, right? It's one of the questions that I ask. The example that I give, because this is pertinent to me, is everybody knows you got to go to college to be successful. Not only do I say that's not true, I actually think college is a bad move right now for 90% of kids. I actually think it's a bad move. I actually think it's the worst possible way to go. And the reason I say that is because it no longer holds the weight that it once did, right? And this isn't just me going, that sounds about right, because I don't like, no, I've got graduate degrees, right? I worked at Stanford in admissions, so I understand that there's a game there. But I've also worked with Fortune 500s around the world for the last 5 or 6 years, and I've talked to the CEOs and the HR managers, and they're telling me, even if something says college degree required, I don't care. Show me the skill set. Show me that you're going to make a difference. Show me that you know us, and you're going to come in and you're going to provide value from day one, and I will take a chance on you, right? So why do you have to go, for a lot of these kids, incur all of this debt that you risk never even paying off for what we've provably seen, a lot of them going back to live with mom and dad afterwards, or they're working at, again, Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, great organizations. That's phenomenal, great places. But did you have to go spend 80 grand, 100 grand to come back and do that? You didn't have to. So there's so many other options out there. There's so many other programs out there that I think provide more value right now than a lot of colleges do. That I said, you've got to be able to challenge. You've got to be able to challenge that status quo. There's so many other options. The flip side of that is we play that game to provide other options and to really open the doors of all the different avenues these kids could go after high school. If we play that right, it actually makes it even easier to get into college if you decide you want to or you need to do that.
Yeah. Here's the other thing that I want to offer the audience, because the big thing that my wife and I debated was the social skills and why that's important to go into college or not to go to college, right?
Sure.
And again, I've met amazingly social people that didn't go to college. I've met,
sure.
So
the opposite. Sure.
Right. So it's funny how we do wire our brains that way.
Yeah.
But one of the things I just have to touch on, because it was so impressionable when we met your kids, 9, 7, and 4 years old.
Yep.
They all looked us in the eye, shook our hands, and say, "Hey, my name is such and such. So nice to meet you." And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Is that just, again, I know I've asked you before, but I just think it's so important to share. Is that something that's taught at the school, or is it just you guys are crushing it as parents at home? Because it was awesome.
No, I appreciate that. My wife crushes it at home. I try to keep up. So we'll start there. But it is part of who we are as a school. That is an absolutely valuable part. They know that providing value to other humans it can't start until you see the humanity of that person, right? Until you know who they are. And they know a big part of that is the good old fashioned, I'm going to look you in the eye, I'm going to shake your hand, I'm going to actually dive in to find out who you are. I'm going to learn to have a conversation, right? It's part of what they do every single day. They're having these conversations in our morning. They start their morning meeting standing up, looking each other in the eyes, shaking hands. They start there. And then they dive into these Socratic discussions. They learn how to have a conversation. And when I say learn how to have a conversation, they're not doing what a lot of adults do, go, okay, I'm just going to keep my mouth closed until you're done, but I'm already planning on what I'm about to say next, right? They're not doing that. They're listening to the other side. Then they're challenging their own beliefs on what they say, what's coming out next. They're doing so with an open mind, right? They're learning what actual communication looks like. That is a huge part of what we do. And then they learn to do things like give real feedback, hold each other accountable. They've got a contract of behavior where they can literally, I can have a 6-year-old who literally looks at another 6-year-old and goes, man, right now you are violating, rule number 3 that we all came up together. So I'm going to, ask you to please, redirect your behavior or whatever that looks like. It gives them those tangible skills. And then they also learn at an early age not to take the critical feedback personally, right? So what you end up with is healthy human beings. And if you want to talk about changing things from a social standpoint and getting them to be socially ready to go, those are the things that make a human being social. They're able to take that critical feedback. They're able to look at themselves. They know themselves. There's a quiet, comfortable confidence in who they are as individuals. That's what we want from a society. Because when you have a whole bunch of individuals like that, well, then the collective looks pretty good. When we focus on this collectivism point of view, which is what we've kind of been focusing on for a long time, what you end up is with a whole lot of people who don't any longer have personal responsibility. The individuality is now shoved under the rug. So then collectively, it's a bunch of monkeys that don't know who we are, right? And so that's where we're eradicating that individually.
Yeah, and you see it, guys, again, when you walk through the campus, if you get the pleasure of doing it. And I know you're adding another campus, so that's coming soon, right? You're closing
We're closing on it this week, man, in Sacramento, which is great. That's always kind of been our goal, is we want to put a number of these campuses, just here locally in the Sacramento area. And so we've gone from 0 to a really good, strong community here in Roseville in these 3 years with a beautiful campus. And so we're keeping that momentum going. So we'll be opening in Sacramento fall of 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats, brother.
Thanks,
and since you didn't have enough on your plate, you got a couple other things going, man.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, you got TEDx Roseville. And I know obviously COVID-19 has maybe pushed that out a bit, but talk about how you got involved with that and what people, how they could come see it, be a part of it, because it is unique.
I appreciate that. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. So having a couple things on the plate is something that I'm used to. While building this acting community in general, I was doing 50 to 60 keynotes a year around the world, right, while building this. So having something going on at all times is just kind of the status quo. I was already planning 2020 to be the year that I really stepped back from speaking. Of course, COVID-19 made sure that happened for me, right, and took a lot of the gigs off the table, so which is fine. But being in that speaking world, my speaking career really got launched because I came out of education, was speaking about education, and was invited to do a TEDx in Santa Cruz. You know, I did that in 2015, and I look back on it now, having done probably 400 keynotes since then. I look back on it and I'm like, oh, I can't even watch it personally. Like, I'm just like, dude, that was awful. Like, it was horrible. But whatever, it got the point across, and it was a great experience. The people at TEDx Santa Cruz were phenomenal, and it really did set me on this trajectory of getting to speak and work with these other organizations. And so that is something that I wanted to give back to our community, and it's also an opportunity for our kids. Our high school kids are going to help us with that entire event. There's a lot that goes into putting on a TEDx event. And so they're going to help with that. So it's great for them on their resume side, but then it also allows for some local people to get up and share some amazingly brilliant ideas that they have. So we have pushed it back. COVID ended up pushing it back. So we're at November 7th now. And we have done everything through really through Facebook. You can find TEDx Roseville on Facebook, and through Eventbrite. You can find TEDx Roseville there as well. We've got about half of our tickets right now are already sold, even without doing any promotion of it. And so we know we're going to sell out, the auditorium, and it's going to be a full day event, not just 16 great speakers, a couple non-speaking acts, as well as things going on during the day. We'll have breaks during the day where you can get to meet the speakers, chat with people, talk about the ideas, but we're gonna have a bunch of other activities and things going on campus, local businesses. So it's gonna be a full day fun event, man.
What a cool event.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to hear you say, man, I look back and it was just, you're cringing because,
it's so hard to watch, dude.
Remember, you're your harshest critic.
For sure.
But you've done so many speaking engagements, you're probably a pretty good judge on it. But that's literally what you teach at your school. That's what you're teaching these kids, is the growth mindset. And it's just, and so I hope that people understand that all of us started at some place, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't necessarily we gave our best, but maybe it didn't come across that way or didn't look. But and it's just who you are, man, and you continue to preach that.
It's that growth mindset, man. It's well put, and I talk to parents all the time. Nobody starts out running. You start out crawling, all right? And then you stand up and you fall down a whole lot. And we know that eventually you get to where you are, you're walking and then you're running, you're moving forward. Everything looks like that. When you start anything, you aren't good at it. And that's okay. But what's not okay is to look 5 years down the road and you're still crawling, right? If it matters, stop crawling, start putting some effort in, and then look 5 years down the road and see where you are. And that's the mindset that matters.
I think that's the overall thing I just love, is you embrace failure so much. It's like, let's go fail.
Let's go.
Yeah. And that's how we know we're growing.
And have fun with it too. One of the things you said in your book, great job on your book, by the way. But was how much you need to embrace the fun in all of that kind of stuff too, for an organization and for, individually. And I definitely took that away. That is something that we definitely embrace there too, is we have a good time with it. Fail now when you're 12, when you're 13, and you're not supporting a family, right? You and I fail right now, there could be potentially bigger consequences, right? We got a wife, we got kids, we got houses, we got these things that we're taking care of, we got responsibilities, as we should. But man, learn now how to fail and how to pivot and how to pull yourself up from the bootstraps after that, when you get to go home to mom and dad and you got summer break, and you learn those lessons now. Again, it's the mindset. Get comfortable with that mindset now, and it really decreases the reality of you failing in the future when it matters more.
Yeah, I love it, dude. I love it. Talk about the Sheepdog program. I don't know a ton about it. I'm actually really excited to learn more.
Hear about this. So there's a couple different things at play here. So one of the things at Acton, we have this term sheepdog that we use, and we just use that for the leaders in our studios. In all of our studios, the leaders that kind of naturally arise, we talk about them as being our sheepdogs and just kind of being the ones that are there holding people to the fire, saying, look, this is our contract, here's the culture, and just kind of protecting that culture, right? So that sheepdog was already kind of a term that we use. So now fast forward, we've got COVID-19 takes place. And so all these people are now schooling from home, and people going, wait a second, the schools aren't prepared for this. And, there's all of this turmoil, and the families are going, we don't know what to do. And the kids are going, we don't know what to do. And the schools are going, and by the way, they're calling me and they're going, hey, we don't know what to do, right? And I'm like, well, there's a couple things going on here. First, systemically, you're not set up for this. Our kids transition, piece of cake. But most importantly, you're not setting your young people up to be self-directed. So they're struggling, right? So we see all that, knowing that as we come back in the fall, there are millions of kids in this country who will not be going back. They won't. They're going to be staying home. But then they're going to go, but now what do we do, right? We're not naive enough to think that, hey, we've got the solution for everybody. So we're starting with kind of the natural sheepdog. So what we're doing is we're creating a program for young men now, and I'm not saying men are better than women. We're branching, it's, you geared more towards high school than younger kid. No, just for this particular arm of the program, we are taking a look at young men in our country, middle school, high school, that want to be sheepdogs, that want to lead, that want to learn how to be leaders as they become older men, as they go out into society. That's what we're doing. So I'm teaming up with Tim Kennedy. Some people may know who Tim is, was a former UFC middleweight. I mean, just a phenomenal fighter, right? Phenomenal athlete, but he was also a Green Beret. He was an Army Ranger, Special Forces sniper. He's got his team that has been called the Sheepdog Response Team. That's his company. And it's a bunch of like Delta Force guys, right? And they teach leadership. They teach situational awareness. They teach close quarter combat for law enforcement. They do a lot of these things around the country. So we are teaming up with them to essentially create a home leadership program for young men. This can serve as their standalone if they're going to stay home and just do this as their homeschool program. It can serve as something that's on the outside of that. But it is walking them through. It's creating a community for these young men where they're going to be challenged to go out and take on leadership-related projects in their community. They're going to be stretched. Of course, we're going to add in the workout component, right? That'll be a cool part. We're going to add in the Socratic discussions because it's a part of what we do at Acton, right? We're going to add in some real-world projects. We're going to add in some mandatory books, a couple. So I see Extreme Ownership over here on your shelf. That's one of those, right? Extreme Ownership, Sovereignty, Can't Hurt Me. Some of these books that are geared towards developing that leadership mentality. We're putting this program together, Tim and I both, to offer to the young men in our country and raise up young leaders. It's a hard time to have a backbone because you're always under fire. You're always under attack in our culture right now. And most people will wither away. And we want people that are going to lead others into to their own hero's journey. So we need more young heroes, man.
It's going to be amazing for those lucky group that's going to be a part of that. I mean, you did mention Can't Hurt Me. You mentioned Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
One of the things about the military branch, and again, I've never served, but I'm just obsessed with learning about SEALs and their systems. And I just have to imagine part of what they do is because it's life and death. Like the Extreme Ownership, there's a reason that Jocko and Leaf called it that.
Right.
We're talking life and death. We're not just talking like, okay, we missed our quarterly goal. We're talking life and death. So they have their whole planning session and then their debrief.
Right.
So important. Is that all going to be a part of the program? And I'm just, now I want to enroll, brother. I got to be there.
Dude, I'm telling you. And that's, again, this is a selfish thing because I'm looking at my young man too, right? Like I built Acton Placer for my kids. I built it for the community. I built it for the legacy. But the most foundational aspect is, look, I've got 3 kids and I need to give them the best opportunity that's available right now. And this is the best opportunity that's available. I'm going to create it because it's not here. Right. I look at my young man too. And I go on the record again, don't edit this out. I go on the record and saying, I believe men and women are different. And whether you want to say that was a nature thing, a nurture thing, a God thing, whatever your beliefs are, great, man. I'm all for it. I'm glad to talk through all that. And that's phenomenal. But I believe they're created different for a reason. And I think we need young men to have the ability to look to other young men and learn the systems of leadership. We don't talk about those systems enough. And the military has produced some great leaders, but again, it's going back to that mindset, right? So what we're training is a mindset. And it's not, I'm not training these kids to go out and be these warriors and we're going to shoot. No, that's not it. I'm training them to speak up when they see wrongdoing. I'm training them to be gentlemen. I'm training these sheepdogs to be the nicest guys in the room. I'm training them to be the hardest workers in the room. I'm training them to be the first ones to stand out in front and say, look, there's injustice here, and here's what I can now do about it. Here's what I will do about it, right? Not be the keyboard warriors that stay back and want to belittle and no. You complain by creating, doing something, that's that old quote, be the change you want to see in the world, right? That's what I love about, some of these guys we're mentioning. They are doing things to create change and lift other people up. That's what we want for our young men.
Yeah, man. In your network, you talked about it earlier. You just continue to connect with people. So Tim was from your MMA days, I believe, right? Yeah. And that's how you got connected. Gary, through your speaking.
Yeah.
And talk about your philosophy of networking, because I think it's led you to some really cool places. And I think anybody listening is like, gosh, well, you got to be as energetic and just thoughtful as you are, but you network, it's with a purpose. And what's your philosophy on it, man? Because I think so many people could benefit from learning from that.
The most foundational aspect of it is I genuinely love people. I mean, that's really part of that is a DNA thing, right? Like I genuinely get energized. Like right now, you and I getting to sit here and talk, and just I get to chat with you. I get to look at you. I get to look at you in the eye. I get to read your body language. I get to do all that. Like that for me, that's my currency, right? That's what I love, and I've always loved that. I genuinely love people, so it starts there. But then it starts with, I think there's two key principles from that point. One, I don't ever go to anybody, and I don't care if they're a well-known person or if it's somebody I'm just meeting. I don't ever go to it going, hey, what can that person do for me? I go to it with a genuine interest of who are you? What do you want? What do you need? What are your hopes and dreams? And then is there anything I can do to help you get it with no expectation of anything in return, right? Like that's the biggest thing. It's people expect, a tit for tat kind of deal. I don't. I don't expect that. I expect to know who you are, and is there any way I can genuinely help you? And then if we never talk again, that's okay, because I just made your life better. That's what I'm here for, right? Is to help other people do what they want to do. I'm here to help them on their journey. All of those relationships that you mentioned literally started there, right? But it also, you need to bring, if you want to get connected with more interesting people. I think everybody's interesting. I mean, I really do. And I think I can learn from everybody, right? But if you've got certain people in mind that are even more interesting to you for whatever reason, do something. And I don't just mean DM them 100 times on Instagram and no, I mean, do something with your own life. Do something with your life. Go out and make some things happen and fail and mess up. All of these are a product of me not getting to connect with people I've wanted to connect to. All of this is a product of me trying other things and messing it up. All of these are a product of me saying yes to a billion opportunities with no expectation of getting anything out of it, just for one or two of those to then transition to, now that's all of a sudden become a connection here, right? Because I said yes to a billion other things. I get one or two opportunities to meet one or two people who may not have even been on my radar that keeps these little connections going, right? It's all of those things. Genuine interest in people, but I say yes to everything as much as humanly possible. Now I'm at the point where just schedule wise and with everything going on, I'm I say lucky enough, but I don't know, I'm lucky enough to be able to say no to more things than yes, and be able to pick and choose a little bit more. But it's a product of not taking myself so seriously forever that I thought I was too good to say yes to everything.
Guys, I hope you hear that. He's bringing value to their life. He's not looking for what's in it for him. The focus is on them, and it's so true. So I got to ask you, man, who has been the most influential person to you personally, and why? I know it's a tough one. I didn't prep you with it.
Yeah.
But I got to know, man.
I love it. It's hard for me to pick a single person because I have different people for different parts of my life, right? I've got different people that I look to for, for business, different people that I look to, spiritually speaking, different people. And I can give if I want to give the real foundational answer, my kids are the ones that drive everything. But if I want to look at the person that I look to that's really kind of driven me through kind of making all of these changes, here's where people get super weirded out. He's not real. And it might be a tie between William Wallace from Braveheart and Tyler Durden from Fight Club.
I love it.
Yeah. And so I've got, one of the books that I read years ago is Think and Grow Rich, right? Napoleon Hill, classic book. The biggest thing I took away from it, and again, and to be honest, I'm not monetarily driven. I never have been. I'm just not. And I don't care if you are, great. I'm not. One of the biggest things I took away from that book is putting together kind of your mastermind, right? Like your board of directors. So I have this board of directors in my head that I consult for any given situation. And again, that board looks different depending on what situation I'm in. But many of those people in my head are not real. One of the things that had the most impact on me that really literally changed my life was I was 14, maybe 15, went to the movies, saw Braveheart. And that whole concept of, every man dies, not every man truly lives. I literally remember sitting there, hearing that, going, wait a second, you're right. I'm not going to waste my life. That literally was a changing, pivotal moment for me. I'm not going to waste my life. Fast forward to 1999, now I'm a 20-year-old watching Fight Club and had read the book as well. And Tyler's concept of not being driven by money and not being so concerned about what other people think that you don't go forward and you don't pull the trigger on things. You don't make, again, pivotal moment for me. So those two guys, as fictional as they are, that really has been my pervading mindset. I am not going to waste a single moment of my life. I'm not going to waste a day. And I sure as heck, I'm not going to waste the time worrying about what somebody else thinks. What they think of me is none of my business. I'm going and trying to provide as much value for other people as I can, And so then you got some ancillary people that come out of that. Chris Gardner was a big one too. His story was told in The Pursuit of Happiness, and his story really resonated with me, and especially as I became to be a dad, and I could name so many more. Michael Jordan for me is a big one, not just because he was the greatest, but because he was a psychopath at his craft. I don't think he was, I was a huge fan growing up. Ultimately, if I look back, I'm like, man, I don't think he's necessarily always that great of a guy. I have actually personal story along those lines too, where I'm like, man, really not super digging. But the fact that he was so intensely focused on becoming the greatest at what he is, I admire that, and I think he had something. So, I mean, I could give you a list of 100 people.
Yeah, man, I like how you take it whether it's a movie, we've talked about several books, and I could geek out on that.
For sure.
But you mentioned something else that I just got to touch on because I haven't heard the terminology a lot when it comes to currency. You said that, and I think you're talking about your emotional currency.
100%.
And so you have, obviously, you think that way where you're adding to that currency or you're taking out.
Yep.
How do you feel your emotional currency? Give the idea of that concept because I love it.
Yeah, for me, my emotions, again, if you want to get down to the happiness factor or whatever, is driven by my time, right? And so I look at my time and go, okay, is this right now, is this useful? However I am using this next 20 minutes, this next 40 minutes, this next block of 60 minutes, is this moving something forward? And by that, I mean, so it's kind of that growth mindset thing, right? Am I moving myself forward? Am I moving opportunities for my family forward? Am I moving opportunities for my community forward? Am I moving opportunities for this individual right here? And I will get some happiness knowing that I'm spending this hour to move this person's life forward, right? And so I look at every single day is broken down into 20-minute chunks for me from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. And and again, when I say happiness, I'm not, hey, sunshine and rainbows the whole time. What I mean is, can I look at all of that time and go, yeah, I'm making something happen there. I'm creating value for someone or something at that point. If I can do that, then it doesn't matter what the bumps are that come along with that. I'm happy. I'm in the mode that I need to be in, right? And so that's what I talk about with my own emotional currency. It literally goes back. I'm addicted to making use of my time. because of that, people go, oh, you must be super stressed out or super anal or super. No, man, I'm not. I'm actually the least stressed person I know. I have 10 times more on my plate than most people I know. There are people out there busier than me for sure. But I'm efficient with that time. I think I need to get better, but I'm efficient with, but I'm so not stressed about it. And I'm so happy with it. And I'm so, excited about the relationships. And again, relationships are a part of that too. If there's a relationship that's I'm not going to be able to serve that person, and they're not going to serve the emotions or the growth. They don't have that growth mindset. They're a complainer. They're a victim. Victimhood's on a pedestal for them. If I can help you, great, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, because that's where that currency comes in, right? My energy comes from spending that time wisely.
Yeah, and you even broke it down. The big thing I heard was you broke it down to 20-minute segments where you're like, instead of it being, I'm going to go crush it for the day, it was, no, for 20 minutes, I'm going to give it and you just do it.
For sure.
Yeah.
And there's components of that, right? The first 20 minutes, like sitting down with, my wife or my kids in that first 20 minutes and having conversation, or, diving into, I like to translate Hebrew scripture, right? I like to translate stuff. So sitting down in the morning before anybody gets up and doing that. And then when they get up, spending some time with my wife and kids, and we have coffee together. Even my 9-year-old, man, she's like, I gotta get my morning. She drinks decaf, but she loves coffee. So it's like sitting down with my 9-year-old having coffee, like I love that. It's a great part of my day. It's getting my workout in. I got a very specific block of time. Like it's just checking off those boxes. Each one of those is propelling me forward. And I just have an inner peace throughout all of that. And that's what permeates. If anything just starts to become not peaceful, I got to figure out what it is that, addresses that. It's very, very quiet in my head.
Yeah, and I can see you being able to break it down because you segment it and block it out that way. Mm-hmm. I got to ask you, so I don't forget, what does freedom mean to you, brother? What is that word? What does that mean to you?
It is quite literally my favorite F word. That's kind of what I've always said, is freedom is my favorite F word, right? It is the ability to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, in a way that doesn't take away from others, right? But it gives back to them too. That's what free will. So again, I don't care what your beliefs are, creator, non-creator, whatever. I believe that there is a creator, and I absolutely believe in free will. And I believe that his mindset is, look, do what you're going to do what you want to do, to have that inner peace, that I feel like I have. Just don't infringe upon somebody else's ability to have their inner peace too, right? And that's really the foundational aspect of what we do at Acton too. We want you to find your hero's journey. We want you to do what you're created to do, that only you can do, man. That is what I want for you. The only thing we ask during that, you don't stomp on somebody else. Don't stomp on their journey, right? Lift them up. Lift them up in their journey. Lift the person over here up in their journey. Hopefully they'll lift you up in your journey, and we can all go on together. That to me is freedom. The freedom to pursue who you actually are. You're not infringing on anybody else. You can do it when you want to do it. You're in that flow of like, this is what I was designed to be. That's freedom. If you've got fear that pulls you out of that, you're not fully free. If you are subjected to somebody else's opinion of you, somebody else's thoughts of you, somebody else's demand of your time, and that demand of your time isn't something where you're enjoying pouring into them, right? You're not getting the peace from that. You're not fully free. You're almost there. So it's all of those components kind of being aligned, and where you have that inner peace.
My favorite F word. I love it, brother. I'm gonna use that because I love that. That's awesome. What should I ask you that I didn't know enough to ask, brother?
Ooh. That's a really good one. What should you ask that you don't? God, I think there's so many ways, because I'm absolutely an open book, man. So I don't ever think of them to go, oh man, I wish they would have asked me this. I wish I could have talked more about this. I guess maybe along the lines of my own understanding of my superpower, right? We're talking about the hero's journey for everybody, and saying everybody's got a genius inside of you. Everybody's got, this hero's journey that they are on. I think for me, my own personal hero's journey, my superpower is the fact that I genuinely love people while simultaneously not caring about what they think about me. And I think that's a genuine superpower. I think that allows me to connect with individuals and lead in ways that are relevant for what we're doing at Acton. And I think everybody needs to get, an awareness of what their superpower is. And so I think that's mine, because I'm bad at almost everything.
Oh, come on.
I really am. There's a few things that I'm good at, and I'm really, like, it's not even like, oh, you're kind of good at this, you're kind of good at this, and then it goes down here and you're not quite as good, but no. I'm good at a few things, and everything else I am awful at. But I think my love for humans, while simultaneously, again, not being impacted by what another person thinks about me, I think is a superpower. And I've just really come to accept that in these last few years, because I see more and more people who really are living a fear-based life, at least in one area. And I really wish I could take that away from everybody, because again, it's that peace. It's that peace of mind.
Brother, you know how I feel. I try to keep the word hate out of my mouth.
Yeah.
But I hate self-limiting beliefs. And
yeah, totally.
Brother, I could do this all day.
Yeah, for sure.
I want people to be able to connect with you. Where can our listeners connect with you online?
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. So, obviously the Essential 11, if you're interested in listening to podcasts, is we've had some great guests, including this handsome man named J.M. Ryerson over here. So definitely worth checking that out. But for me personally, I'm just at Matt Beaudreau on any social media link. But for Acton Placer too is, again, Acton Placer, PLACER.com. You can go there on the website. You can check us out, Instagram, Facebook. Everything is under Acton Placer. We try to keep it all centralized. That'll have our Sacramento campus and everything under there too. So glad to connect any and all of those places.
Well, guys, I hope you do check it out. Trust me when I say having this guy be a part of your life, however small or large, it will definitely make your life better. Brother, I cannot thank you enough for being here, being a part of my life, and really just making it better. Yeah. And so I appreciate what you're doing for the youth of I know it's Placer and bigger, but you're just making such an impact on the world. I just so appreciate you.
I appreciate that greatly, man. And it's the pleasure is always mine. And when you get to find like-minded individuals that are going on pushing things forward too, it's always a pleasure. So not just, getting to be acquainted and figuring things out business-wise, but being able to call you a friend too is a big deal to me. So thank you.
All right, my brother. Well, guys, till next time, thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to transcendentlifepodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Transcend in Life podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson, taking you from fear to freedom.